Everyone, before we begin this morning, I want to address something. Our junior handler for client relations here is no longer with Dalton Group as of today. We are moving in a different direction with someone who better fits our vision. Those words came out of Brenda Walsh's mouth on a Tuesday morning in September. 23 people stood around the main gathering space on the fourth floor. 23 people who suddenly became very interested in the floor tiles or the water dispenser or their own fingernails. Anyone except me. I stood there by the window, holding a stack of reports I had prepared for the quarterly review. 4 years of reports. 4 years of building relationships with people who trusted our services enough to stay with us. 4 years of turning 12 struggling relationships into 97 strong ones. Brenda kept smiling. That particular smile she used when she wanted something to seem friendly, but really wanted you to understand she had already decided everything. Please pack your belongings by the end of today. We need your space for the new person starting Monday. I remember thinking how strange it felt that my legs kept holding me up, that my hands did not drop those reports all over the floor, that I somehow nodded once and walked toward my area without making a sound. Behind me, I heard people starting to whisper. Brenda started talking about quarterly targets, as if she had not just announced that someone was being erased from their workplace in front of everyone who knew her. 4 years earlier, I had walked into Dalton Group with a single goal. My father had sat me down 3 months before I applied and told me something I did not understand at first. He had invested in a small company years ago, a company that needed cash to survive, and he had believed in what they were trying to build. He owned 30% of that company. The name of that company was Dalton Group, but he made me promise something before I applied. Learn everything from the bottom. Do not tell anyone who you are or what connection you have. Earn every single thing yourself. If you use my name, you will never know if you truly deserved what you got. I want you to know you earned it. I promised him. I gave him my word that I would never mention his investment or his name or any connection between us. I would be just another person trying to build a career, just another woman working her way forward one day at a time. He died 2 years into my time at Dalton, lung infection that turned into something worse. I worked through the days after his funeral because I did not know what else to do. My sister Phoebe needed surgery 6 months later for a growth they found in her abdomen. I worked through those weeks too. Every weekend for the past 18 months, I had been at my workspace or visiting clients or preparing presentations. Not because anyone forced me, because I wanted to prove to myself that my father had been right about me, that I could do this without his name protecting me. Brenda knew none of this. Nobody at Dalton knew any of it. To them, I was just Lily Brennan, who had somehow gotten lucky with clients, who had somehow managed to keep people happy enough to stay, who had somehow come up with strategies that worked. Somehow. That word Brenda used a lot when talking about my results. You somehow managed to keep the Hilford people from leaving. You somehow convinced the Canton Group to expand their agreement with us. You somehow found a way to bring in those referrals from the Northwest region, as if luck had done it. As if I had stumbled into success the way you stumble into a puddle on a rainy day. 3 weeks before that Tuesday morning, Brenda had called me into her space. The investor group is coming to look at buying us. This is going to change everything. I need you to prepare all your client relationship reports and strategy breakdowns. Everything you have done over the past 4 years. I need it organized and ready to present. I had spent 70 hours over those 3 weeks getting everything ready. Client history, growth patterns, relationship management approaches, response strategies for problems, expansion opportunities I had identified. 70 hours of my work condensed into presentation materials that showed exactly how we had grown from 12 to 97. Now I stood in my small workspace area, packing my belongings into 2 boxes. A plant Phoebe had given me, a framed picture of our family from before Dad died, some books about negotiation and client relations, a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Employee" that my friend Tracy had given me as a joke. My 4 years fit into 2 small boxes. Tracy came over while I was packing. She looked like she wanted to cry, but was holding it back. "This is garbage, Lily. You built half this place. More than half. Everyone knows it." "I know, Tracy. It is fine. Sometimes things just happen this way. But it is not fine. You should fight this. You should talk to Gerald. He owns this place. He should know what you actually do here." Gerald Moss owned 60% of Dalton Group. My father's investment group owned the other 30%. The remaining 10% was split between early employees who had stayed long enough to earn small shares. Gerald barely knew I existed. To him, I was just another junior-level worker doing whatever junior-level workers do. I cannot fight it, Tracy. I just need to move on. Find something else. It will be okay. She hugged me before I left that day. So did 4 other people who had worked near me. People who knew what I actually did. People who had watched me build relationships with clients that kept money flowing into Dalton year after year. But none of them could change what Brenda had decided. None of them had that kind of power. Before I go further, let me say thank you for listening to what happened to me. It means something that you are hearing this. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. What city? What country? I want to know this story is reaching people everywhere. Now, back to what happened next. I went home that Tuesday afternoon and sat in my apartment staring at those 2 boxes. My phone rang 4 times. Clients calling about their accounts. I did not answer. They were not my accounts anymore. They were not my concern anymore. By tomorrow, Brenda would assign them to whoever was replacing me, and that person would start fresh with relationships I had spent years building. Phoebe came over that evening. She took one look at my face and knew something had broken. She made tea and sat across from me waiting for me to talk. When I finally told her what happened, she got angry in that quiet way she gets. The way where her voice drops lower instead of getting louder. They let you go. Just like that. After everything you have done. After everything you gave up to work there. I did not give up anything. I chose to work hard. That was my choice. You gave up time with Dad before he died. You worked through his funeral. You barely slept when I was in the hospital because you were juggling visits and client problems. You gave up everything for them, and they just announced you were done in front of everyone, like you were nothing. She was not wrong, but being right does not change anything. Brenda had decided I was finished at Dalton. Gerald would believe whatever Brenda told him about my performance or my fit with the company vision or whatever reason she invented. The investor group would come in 3 weeks. They would look at Dalton's growth and probably decide to buy it. Brenda would present all my work as her own strategic vision. Life would continue for everyone except me. Except I kept thinking about something. Brenda had never given me any official paperwork. No termination letter. No final payment breakdown. No documentation about ending my time there. She had just announced it in front of people and told me to pack my things, which meant technically, on paper, I was still employed. My name was still on the official lists. I was still officially assigned to my clients and my projects. I did not know what to do with that information, but I held on to it. 3 weeks felt like a long time to leave that kind of loose thread hanging. Something about it felt wrong, careless. Brenda was many things, but she was usually thorough about details like paperwork and procedures. The investor group was scheduled to visit on October 9th. I knew because I had seen the date on Brenda's planning notes, when she had asked me to prepare those materials. October 9th was 22 days away from the Tuesday I packed my boxes. 22 days for Brenda to present my 4 years of work as her own success story. 22 days for Gerald to sell Dalton Group to people who would never know the real story of how it grew. My father's investment group, the group he had built with his own money and his own belief that Dalton was worth supporting. That group was coming to potentially buy the whole company, and I was not supposed to be there when it happened. I spent those 22 days in a strange kind of limbo, officially fired but never officially terminated. My access to the building still worked. My login credentials still functioned. My name still appeared on internal lists and client assignments. It was as if Brenda had announced my ending, but forgotten to actually end it. Phoebe thought I should walk away completely, start applying to other places, move forward. But something kept pulling me back to one specific thought. The investor group coming to evaluate Dalton included people who had worked with my father, people who had trusted him enough to build something together, people who probably did not even know he had a daughter who had been working at the company he had invested in. One of those people was a woman named Helen Kowalski. She had been my father's partner in 3 different ventures over 15 years. I had met her exactly once at his funeral. She had hugged me and told me that my father had talked about me constantly, that he was so proud of what I was building at Dalton, even though I did not know he was watching from a distance through reports the investment group received quarterly. Helen was leading the evaluation team coming on October 9th. I knew this because I still had access to the shared planning documents Brenda had created, documents she had forgotten to remove me from before making her announcement, so I could see every detail of what was planned, the tour schedule, the presentation outline, the attendee list, everything. Brenda had structured the main presentation around client growth and retention strategies, my growth, my retention methods. But in her outline, every single achievement was attributed to her leadership vision and her innovative approaches to relationship building. 4 years of my work, rewritten as her success story. I could have walked away, should have walked away. Let her have it. Let Gerald sell the company. Let Helen and the investment group make their decision based on false information. I had promised my father I would earn everything myself. I had kept that promise. Revealing the truth now would mean breaking that promise. It would mean using his name and his connections to fight back. It would mean admitting I could not win on my own merit, but he was gone. The promise had been to him, and he was not here anymore to see whether I kept it or broke it. And something about watching Brenda take credit for 4 years of my life felt worse than breaking a promise to someone who could no longer hear me explain why I had to. 5 days before the meeting, I made a decision. I was going to be there, not to cause a scene, not to interrupt, just to be present, to sit in that room and watch what happened. If Helen recognized me, she recognized me. If she did not, then I would know the universe was telling me to let this go and move on. October 9th arrived gray and cold, the kind of morning where the sky feels like it is pressing down on everything. I dressed carefully, professional but not flashy. I wanted to look like I belonged there without drawing attention, before the right moment. If there was going to be a right moment. I arrived at Dalton at 8:30. The meeting was scheduled for 9. The building receptionist looked surprised to see me but said nothing. Maybe she did not know I had been let go. Maybe she did not care. I went to the 4th floor where the main gathering space had been set up with chairs and presentation equipment. Brenda was already there reviewing notes. When she saw me, her face did something complicated. Surprise, confusion, anger, all of it flashing across her expression in about 2 seconds. What are you doing here? You do not work here anymore. I kept my voice calm, even. You never processed any termination paperwork. I am still officially employed according to every system we have. I am still assigned to my clients. I am still listed as part of this team. So, I am here for the meeting. She opened her mouth to argue, but Gerald walked in at that exact moment with 3 people I did not recognize. The investor group. Gerald looked distracted, stressed. He barely glanced at me. Brenda forced a smile and turned her attention to greeting the visitors. Helen was not with them yet. Maybe she was running late. Maybe she was not coming at all. People filtered in over the next 15 minutes. Employees from different areas, managers, senior staff. I sat in the back row trying to be invisible, trying to just exist in the space without drawing attention. Tracy spotted me and her eyes went wide. She started to come over, but I shook my head slightly. Not now. Just let this play out. At 9:05, Helen Kowalski walked in with 2 other people from the investment group. She was talking to Gerald about quarterly projections. She looked older than I remembered from the funeral, tired, but her voice still had that sharp quality my father had always described. Helen does not miss details. She will notice things you did not even know were there to notice. The meeting started with Gerald giving an overview of Dalton's history and growth trajectory. Then he handed the presentation over to Brenda. This is Brenda Walsh, our Director of Client Relations. She is going to walk you through the strategies that have driven our expansion over the past 4 years. Brenda stood up with a confidence that would have been impressive if it had been earned. She started talking about relationship building frameworks, client retention methodologies, growth targeting systems. Every single concept was something I had developed. Every single approach was something I had tested and refined through months of trial and error. She presented them like they had emerged fully formed from her own strategic thinking. I watched Helen's face while Brenda talked. She was listening carefully, taking notes, asking occasional questions about implementation details. Brenda answered smoothly. She had studied my materials well enough to fake understanding of how they actually worked in practice. 20 minutes into the presentation, Brenda brought up a specific client situation, the Hilford account, how it had been on the verge of leaving Dalton 3 years ago, how she had personally developed an approach to rebuild trust and demonstrate value, how that approach had not only saved Hilford, but turned them into one of our strongest advocates who brought in 5 referrals over the following 2 years. I had spent 11 months rebuilding the Hilford relationship, 11 months of weekly calls and visits and problem solving, and proving we could deliver what we promised. I had driven 4 hours each way every other week to meet with their team in person because they needed to see commitment. I had missed Phoebe's birthday dinner because of a Hilford crisis. I had taken calls at 11 at night and 6 in the morning because their operation ran on irregular hours. 11 months of my life that Brenda was now describing as her personal achievement. Helen stopped taking notes. She looked up at Brenda with an expression I could not quite read. Can you walk me through the specific tactics you used for Hilford? The week-by-week decisions. How you identified what would work? Brenda hesitated for maybe half a second. Then she started describing a process that sounded plausible but was not what actually happened. She talked about relationship mapping and value proposition refinement. Technical phrases that sounded good but did not match the reality of driving 4 hours to sit in someone's break room and eat sandwiches while talking through their frustrations. Helen nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She looked away from Brenda and scanned the room. Her eyes moved across faces in the front rows, then the middle rows. Then she got to the back where I was sitting. Her eyes landed on me and stopped moving. I saw recognition hit her, saw her face change, saw her lean forward slightly in her chair, as if she needed to make sure she was seeing correctly. She stared at me for what felt like a long time, but was probably 5 seconds. Then she turned to the person sitting next to her and whispered something. That person looked at me too. Then, back at Helen. Then at me again. Brenda was still talking about client growth metrics. Gerald was watching the presentation. Nobody else had noticed Helen's attention shift except the people immediately around her. And me. Helen raised her hand. Brenda stopped mid-sentence. Yes. Do you have a question? Helen's voice came out quiet, but everyone heard it anyway. Wait. She pointed toward the back row, pointed directly at me. You there in the back. Can you come up here, please? The room went still. That particular kind of stillness where everyone stops breathing at the same time. Brenda's face lost color. Gerald looked confused. Tracy grabbed the chair in front of her. I stood up on legs that felt like they might give out and walked to the front. Every step felt like it took an hour. Helen stood up when I reached her. She looked at my face from maybe 2 feet away. Her eyes were sharp, searching. Then she said the words that changed everything. You are his daughter. You are David Brennan's daughter. The room somehow got even quieter. I nodded once. Yes, my father was David Brennan. Helen turned to Gerald. You knew David had a daughter working here. You had to know. Gerald looked like someone had just told him the building was on fire. I did not know. I had no idea David had a daughter. I certainly did not know anyone here was related to him. Helen looked at Brenda. Did you know? Brenda's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. Then she managed to say no. I had no idea. She never mentioned it. Nobody knew. Helen sat back down. She reached into the bag she had brought and pulled out a worn notebook. My father's notebook. I recognized it immediately. He had carried it everywhere the last 5 years of his life. Brown leather cover, pages filled with his cramped handwriting. I had looked for it after he died, but never found it. Helen opened it to a page marked with a small tab. She started reading out loud. October 14th. Lily saved the Hilford situation. They were ready to walk. She drove out there every other week for months. Built trust back piece by piece. I am watching her prove she can do this without anyone knowing I am connected. She is better at this than I ever was. She flipped to another marked page. January 9th. Lily brought in 3 new relationships from the Northwest region. Nobody handed her those. She identified opportunity and pursued it. Brenda takes credit in reports to investors, but I know the truth. I see the real numbers. I see what my daughter actually does. Helen read 4 more entries, each one documenting something I had done, each one dated, each one describing achievements that Brenda had just finished claiming as her own work. My father had been watching. He had been documenting. He had known exactly what was happening and had written it all down. When Helen finished reading, Gerald looked like someone had replaced his bones with water. He sat there staring at the notebook, then at me, then back at the notebook. Brenda had gone completely still. The kind of still where you are trying to decide if you can somehow disappear by not moving. Helen closed the notebook carefully. She looked at Gerald. David wrote these entries right up until he died. He tracked his daughter's progress because he wanted to know if his investment in this company was being built on real foundations or false ones. Every strategy this woman just presented as her own vision is documented in here as Lily's work. Dates, details, results, everything. One of the other investors spoke up, a man named Paul something. I had not caught his last name during introductions. So you are telling us the growth we are looking at came from someone sitting in the back row? not from the director presenting to us. Helen nodded. That is exactly what I am telling you. David was very clear in these entries. He watched the internal reports. He saw who did what. He documented it because he wanted proof that his daughter was earning her place without his help. He never told her he was tracking this. He just kept a record. Gerald found his voice finally. Lily, I had no idea. If I had known you were David's daughter, I would have. He stopped. Would have what? Treated you differently. Given you opportunities you earned anyway. He did not finish the sentence, because there was no good way to finish it. Brenda tried to speak. Helen, I can explain. These strategies were team efforts. Lily contributed certainly, but the overall vision and implementation direction came from my leadership framework and Helen cut her off with a look. Do not insult me. I have been evaluating businesses for 30 years. I know the difference between leadership and theft. You stood here for 25 minutes claiming work that was not yours. You announced 3 weeks ago that this woman was being let go, and you did it in front of her colleagues without even processing proper termination paperwork. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your competence. The room was so quiet, I could hear someone breathing heavily 3 rows back. Helen turned to Gerald. We are still interested in acquiring Dalton, but our terms just changed. We are not buying this company to let it continue operating the way it has been. We are restructuring. Gerald looked relieved and terrified at the same time. Whatever you need, we can work with any structure you want to implement. Helen looked at me. We want Lily in charge of all client operations. Every relationship, every strategy, every decision about how this company interacts with the people who pay for your services. She reports directly to our investment group, not to Gerald, not to anyone here, to us. I felt something twist in my chest. That was not what I had expected. I had thought maybe Helen would expose the truth. Maybe she would recommend they not buy Dalton. Maybe she would tell Gerald he needed to make changes. But putting me in charge, that was something different entirely. What about Brenda? Gerald's voice came out small. What happens with her role? Helen did not look at Brenda when she answered. Brenda stays. She reports to Lily now. She remains employed here to assist with whatever Lily needs. But she no longer has authority over client relations or strategic direction. That belongs to Lily. I saw Brenda's face do something I had never seen before. It crumpled, just for a second. Then she pulled it back together into a blank expression that looked like it hurt to maintain. But she did not argue. She did not protest. What could she say that would not make everything worse? The meeting continued for another hour, but I barely heard any of it. Helen and the other investors talked with Gerald about purchase terms and transition timelines and operational adjustments. People asked questions. Gerald answered some of them. Helen answered others. I sat in a chair someone had brought up to the front and tried to process what had just happened. My father had kept a notebook documenting my work. He had watched me for 4 years, proving I could do this without his name. And then he had died before seeing where it would lead. Before knowing whether his investment in me and his investment in Dalton would both pay off the way he had hoped. Now his notebook had become the weapon that gave me power I had not asked for. After the meeting ended, Helen came over to where I was sitting. Most people had left. Tracy was waiting near the door to talk to me. Brenda had disappeared somewhere. Gerald was in his office, probably trying to figure out what had just happened to his company. Helen sat down next to me. Your father loved you very much. He talked about you constantly, how smart you were, how hard you worked, how you insisted on earning everything yourself. He was so proud of that stubbornness, even though it frustrated him sometimes that you would not let him help you. Why did you keep his notebook? I kept my voice steady, but it took effort. He gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. He knew he was getting sicker. He asked me to hold on to it, said if anything ever happened with Dalton and you were there, I should have proof of what you built. I think part of him knew something like this might happen, that people would try to take credit for your work. He wanted to make sure you had protection, even after he was gone. I did not know what to say to that. My father had protected me from beyond his death, had made sure I had proof I could use if I needed it. But using it meant breaking the promise I had made to him. It meant revealing the connection he had made me swear to keep hidden. Helen stood up. The acquisition will take about 60 days to finalize. Then you start your new role. I know this is not what you expected today, but your father believed you could run this entire operation if given the chance. Now you have that chance. What you do with it is up to you. She left me sitting there with those words hanging in the air around me. 60 days later, I started as Director of Client Operations, reporting directly to the investment group. My new workspace was 3 times the size of my old one. I had authority over 17 people, including Brenda. I had final say on strategy and implementation and relationship management. Everything I had been doing unofficially for 4 years, I was now doing officially with power and resources and recognition. Brenda reported to me. That was the strangest part. Every week she came to my workspace for check-ins. Every decision she wanted to make, she had to run past me first. Every strategy she proposed, I could approve or reject. She never argued, never pushed back, just did what I told her to do with that blank expression that looked painful to maintain. I was not cruel to her. I did not humiliate her, or mock her, or make her life miserable. I just did my job and expected her to do hers. But I knew what it cost her. Having to ask permission from someone she had tried to erase, having to watch someone she had dismissed become her supervisor, having to sit in meetings where her ideas were questioned while mine were implemented. That was the punishment. Not cruelty, just reality, adjusted to reflect truth. 6 months into the new structure, Brenda walked into my workspace on a Friday afternoon. She looked exhausted, worn down. She put a single page on my work surface. Resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice. She could not do this anymore. Could not stay in a place where every day reminded her of what she had tried to steal and failed to keep. I accepted her resignation, wished her well in whatever came next, meant it genuinely. I did not need her to suffer forever. I just needed her to understand that taking credit for other people's work has consequences. She understood now. That was enough. In those same 6 months, I implemented changes that increased Dalton's value significantly. New relationship building frameworks, expansion into markets we had never considered, client retention approaches that reduced departure rates to almost nothing. The company became worth 3 times what the investment group had paid for it. Helen told me my father would have been impossibly proud, that this was exactly what he had hoped I could do. But some nights I still wake up thinking about the promise I broke. My father made me swear I would earn everything myself, that I would never use his name or his connections, that I would prove I deserved success on my own merit. I kept that promise for 4 years, built everything without anyone knowing who I was connected to. Then, in one moment, I let Helen reveal it all. Let my father's notebook become the proof that saved me. I tell myself I had earned it already, that revealing the connection did not change what I had actually accomplished, that my father's documentation just confirmed what was already true. But another voice in my head asks if I really won or if I just accepted a different kind of defeat. If proving myself meant doing it completely alone, then I failed. I needed my father's memory and his written words to claim what I had built. That question does not have a comfortable answer. Maybe it does not have an answer at all. Maybe winning always costs something. Maybe you never get revenge without losing a piece of what you were trying to protect. Maybe the point is not whether you win cleanly, but whether what you gain is worth what you give up. I run client operations for a company worth 3 times what it was when Brenda tried to erase me. I make decisions that affect dozens of employees and nearly 100 client relationships. I have authority and recognition and respect. But I also have a broken promise to my father, a promise that meant something to both of us. A promise I cannot unbreak no matter how much I try to justify why breaking it was necessary. So when people ask if I got revenge on Brenda Walsh, the answer is yes. When they ask if it felt good, the answer is complicated. When they ask if I would do it again, the answer is I do not know. Some victories do not feel the way you think they will. Some justice comes with a cost you did not expect to pay. Some stories do not end with clean satisfaction. They just end with you standing in a bigger workspace, wondering what your father would think about how you got there. Thank you for listening to what happened to me, for staying until the end. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment telling me what you think. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. Stories about real people facing impossible situations and finding ways through. I appreciate every single person who listened. Thank you.